Alright everyone, welcome to the Week 2 Tonto's Demise recap. I know most of you don't actually watch this, you probably just listen to it. So I'm taking this opportunity to play around with the computer and the camera tricks here, whatever you want to call them. But alright, enough of that. Week 2, I think it seems like we start out like this every year. We got a bunch of teams that are 2-0. We got a bunch of teams that are 0-2. Two teams right in the middle. And these first 2 weeks have been just a bloodbath in terms of injuries. Guys going down all over the place. If you made it through week 1, you were praying that you didn't get hit in week 2. But many of us who got through that week weren't so lucky here in the second week. Some of us have managed to be safe so far, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it seems like every year for the past couple of years, these first few weeks, the end of the preseason and the first couple of weeks, is when the injuries really pile up. I don't know if the players aren't they're not quite conditioned, ready enough. I don't know, since they don't play very much in the preseason, they just do training camp. I don't know. There's a lot of new rules with the the contracts, negotiations, whatever it was a couple years ago with the players union and stuff like that. Like they don't have to practice as hard or things like that. I don't know. It just might be, I don't know if it's a conditioning thing or not, but it just seems like, outside of the quarterbacks who were taking some pretty big hits all over the place on Sunday, the other guys can't seem to get it going here in the early season, and little injuries that probably shouldn't come up, but as the season goes along, things get better. So let's just get right into it with the defending champion FC Bohoric, who after these first 2 weeks is pretty much demoralized, and he went up against the Springfield Isotopes. Isotopes won this one 171.7 to 115.15. As we mentioned, Tony Romo, quarterback, getting hurt. He went out at the beginning of the third quarter. He's done for 8 weeks, I believe. He is on the temporary IR. Got some points from Brandon Whedon, though. I think about 12 or 13 from him, something like that, tacked on to the 26. And Julio Jones, 26 from him. Golden Tate, 15. Landry, 20. Pretty much nothing at all. Well, nothing at all from Ryan Matthews. I don't think they gave him a carry. He had a couple passes thrown his way. Anybody who watched the Eagles game, it was torture watching their offense try to move the ball. Ugh. Even though they were up against the Romo-less, Dez-less Cowboys. Jordan Reed, decent game from him. Mr. Antonio Brown, once again, I'm representing because I feel like I just have to. God, that guy is just fun to watch every week. I'm going to miss him next year, unless I get a really high draft pick. 40 points from him this week, almost 200 yards, 9 catches, another touchdown. He's just off the charts, this guy, when it comes to fantasy every week. Gotta love him. Kicker did okay. Seattle defense didn't do too much. Hopefully they'll come around here as the season goes along. Gave up a lot of points, didn't really get many turnovers or sacks or anything, but it was more than enough to take down FC Bohoric. Said he only managed 115 points. Drew Brees, 38 points from him. Looks like he might be injured. Nobody knows for sure the severity of that yet. You got a good game from Demaryius Thomas. Probably would have liked to see him get into the end zone, but he didn't. 20 points, though, pretty good. After Keenan Allen blew up in week 1, he only decided to catch 1 pass this week for 6 yards. Lost a fumble. Actually, you know what? Looking here, he caught 2 passes for 16 yards, but he lost the fumble. so he got you 1.5 points. Vincent Jackson, only a couple catches, but he got a touchdown. Pretty much nothing from LeGarrette Blount to match Ryan Matthews. Bishop Sankey and he matches Andre Williams with 42 yards to 43. Greg Olsen, waiting for him to really come on here, but better than week 1, but only 13 points from him. CJ Anderson looks like he's starting to bust. I don't want to say, it's a little too early in the season, but he is trending that way, not looking too good. At least here these first 2 weeks, I don't think he's done very much. He only got 4 points out of the flex this week. Pretty much, you'll see your third one. When one of your highest scorers is your kicker, it's never a good Sunday for you. But McManus did pretty good. And your Buffalo defense, who did really good for you in week 1. New England just went out and thumped them. Even though they did not run the ball very much, it was just the Tom Brady show. He had 400-some passing yards. They gave up 40 points. Buffalo got 2 turnovers, a couple sacks, but all those points and all that yardage really cost you, ended defeat, cost you points there, so you didn't really get too much from them. But hopefully, better times will be ahead. 115 is not very... It's about as low as you're going to get, except unless you're the Wolves of New Hanover. So keep your head up. It's only 2 weeks, but you are 0-2, but you're also 0-2 with 4 other people. So there's only one way to go, but up for the defending champion. But we do have a history of people going from first to worst. So hopefully you can avoid that curse. So, okay, speaking of curses, we've got the Detonators, who thought maybe they were off the hook after last year, made the playoffs. Was the curse broken? Well, maybe not, as the Detonators went up against Possum Magic, trying to avoid going 0-2, and he was not able to do it, as Possum Magic took this one down 165.75 to 124.6. Big game from Ryan Tannehill, 60 points from him. That's kind of what you were hoping for on a week-to-week basis. He didn't really deliver in week 1, but a lot of completions in this game. It was kind of, the final score wasn't really a shootout, but ended up going back and forth. He had 30 completions for 350 yards. So they were throwing the ball all over the field. Denver defense, big game from them. Yahoo says 31. I think it was a little bit more than that. So your 165 points, you got about 100 of them from just your quarterback and your defense. So I know I've preached it before. A lot of times in this league, those are the really 2 or the most crucial positions on your roster on a week-to-week basis. If you can get a good output from those 2, you're really got a big advantage on your opponent. Like I said, just from those 2, Possum Magic had about 100 points. Got 13 from AJ Green. Up and down your lineup, other than those 2, really average performances. Like I said, AJ Green, 13. DeMarco Murray, most of his points did not count because he didn't flex him. He only got you 2 yards. Doug Martin, 5 points from him. He had 78 rushing yards, but he lost a fumble. Couple catches and a touchdown for Kyle Rudolph. A touchdown and some rushing for Mark Ingram. Once again, the kicker was one of the best scorers on this team. Bunch of field goals for Justin Tucker, but it was enough to take down Detonators, who managed to get 2 zeros from 2 of his wide receivers. He plugged in Mike Evans, thought he was coming back from an injury, thought maybe he would this will be the week that he breaks out. Just wasn't meant to be. I don't know if they even threw how many passes they threw his way, but he got you 0. Always risky starting a Seattle Seahawks wide receiver. You started Curse, he got you 0. You matched him up with Russell Wilson, trying to play the quarterback roulette here that you've got. Maybe not so much. Maybe it's more like a dart board here. You throw in darts, which quarterback is going to, of the 3 that you've got, is going to be the best performer each week. You tossed Russell Wilson out there this week. He got you 42. You got a good game to start with from Emmanuel Sanders on Thursday night. 8 for 87 and 2 touchdowns from him, 28 points. So those two, that's a good start there. Get you about 70. But unfortunately, you got those 2 zeros. Alfred Morris, not much, 60 yards from him. He got outplayed and out-touchdowned by, what's his name? I don't even know. We'll get to him later. Duke Johnson, you plugged him in. He got you 40 yards. Heath Miller, couple catches, touchdown, and a 2-point conversion. Jamal Charles, also on Thursday night, had a pretty decent game for you. You hated to see those turnovers for him, but he got a touchdown. He got you 120 yards, 21 points in your flex. Kicker got you a field goal and a couple PATs. And I think the Miami defense, who I believe you said had the easiest schedule here in the first couple of weeks of the season. Maybe not so much, as they've struggled against Washington, and now they struggled against Jacksonville, giving up a lot of yardage, a lot of points. They actually lost this game, and Yahoo says 3. I think it maybe it's a little bit more than that, but not much. Fortunately for you, your 124.6 was better than the FC Bohoric's 115. So I did not mention it, but FC Bohoric is is he the winner of the knockout pool? He is the loser of the knockout pool this week. So we say goodbye to him. But Detonators, you still get the loss, and you are down to 0-2, and you are in 11th place. While Possum Magic, he moves up to 2-0, and he is in 4th place. The aforementioned Wolves of New Hanover, the Raritan Wolves, knocked out in week 1 with a pretty poor performance. Unfortunately for him, it was another poor performance going up against a questionable quarterback play by the Dub C Hooligans, but it was more than enough for Dub C Hooligans to win this one. The final score is 136.15 to the Raritan Wolves 102.7, which I think happens to also be Jimmy's favorite radio station, 102.7. Thursday night, a lot of people were scratching their heads as Dub C Hooligans plugged Alex Smith into his starting lineup, already losing faith in Matthew Stafford, who actually scored 53 this week. Luckily, it didn't cost you, other than the overall points total. But Alex Smith only got you 21 points. Cooks, only 10 points from him. 11 points. Devontae Adams, John Brown, both of those guys, 8-9 points. Lamar Miller, most of his stats for you didn't count. Forsett got you 60 yards, not too much. Gronkowski, another big performance from him. He's probably going to carry your team a lot of times this year. 7 catches, 113 yards, touchdown from him. You put Woodhead in here in the flex. Probably what you should have done in week 1, which cost you a victory. Only 35 rushing yards, but he got you 6 catches and 68 yards. So pretty decent performance here. 16 points. Unfortunately, no touchdowns, but you're not going to score 2 touchdowns every week. High-scoring game, as I mentioned, with New England and Buffalo. Bunch of field goals and PATs for your kicker. And the Carolina defense, probably probably expected a little bit more from them. They only got 1 turnover and 1 sack. Gave up a decent amount of points. I think after the week 1 performance, they were pretty good. Here it looked like they were going to be at home against Houston, who's got some quarterback issues. But gave up a lot more points and more yardage than you would have liked to see, or you were hoping for. So you would have liked to see more turnovers from them, but they weren't able to do it. But hey, doesn't matter. You got the win. That's all that matters here. As for the Raritan Wolves, man, going into the Monday night game, probably one of the lowest point totals ever. You had 48.6 points, but you still had your quarterback and you had one of his wide receivers in the flex position. So everything counted from him. Andrew Luck, unfortunately, in what looked like was going to be a good matchup. Turnovers everywhere for him. He only got you 29 points. Let's see, your wide receiver core, only 1 touchdown from them. Let's see. Just about 30 points from your 3 wide receivers combined. Marshawn Lynch, another quiet game from him. Jeremy Hill, lost fumbles. His lost fumbles pretty much negated all of his rushing yards. So he was pretty much a 0 for you there. Jimmy Graham, I think he's pretty angry about his role on the Seattle Seahawks. And I think Jimmy is probably pretty unhappy about Jimmy Graham's role on the Raritan Wolves because he got you 2 points on his 1 catch. Like I said, you had Moncrief in your flex going into Monday night. He was probably the only bright spot on the Indianapolis Colts offense. He had 120 yards, 7 catches, and a touchdown. 25 points from him. Vinatieri missed a field goal but made 1 PAT, so that was a 0. And the Eagles defense managed to get you a couple turnovers and a couple sacks. Didn't give up a lot of points, but decent amount of yardage. They got you 15 points on Yahoo. I don't know what the final was, but it was something in that range. So thankfully for you, to save some face, Andrew Luck and Moncrief got you just over the 100-point mark, which anything below that is just a sad performance. But you made it over that. You would have been knocked out this week easily, but you were knocked out previously in week 1, so you are in 12th place, and the Dubsy Hooligans, with their win, he is 1-1, and he sits in 7th place. Alright, who do we want to talk about next? We had the biggest score of the week went to the Huber Squashers, who are going up against the Mighty Midgets. And Huber Squashers manages one of the 200-point efforts this week, getting 208.15. For Mighty Midgets, he only had 169.45. I guess I shouldn't say he only had 169.45, because that would have been enough points to beat several teams this week. Unfortunately, much like Justin Bohoric last week, you had to go up against the highest scoring team of the week. Not much you can do about that. Huber Squashers, Ben Roethlisberger, almost 60 points from him. Edelman, looks like he's going to be consistent all year long. 11 catches, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's just said 11 catches, less than 100 yards. So he's just piling up the short catches. He managed to get 2 touchdowns this week. That probably won't happen every week. You would think somebody's gonna realize that you got to block that, you got to defend that guy. Steve Smith showed up for you this week after almost nothing in week 1 in a crazy blowout game, not blowout, but shootout game at Oakland. He had 10 catches, 150 yards. Unfortunately, no touchdowns for you, but he just getting to 150 got you the bonus. So you actually got 28 points from Steve Smith, which is good because you got 0 from Roddy White. And so hopefully you're going to get those performances more often down as the season goes along. As you know, you're going to be Des Bryant-less for quite a while here. Joseph Randall, who knows what he's going to be doing with for the Cowboys situation. Really owning any Cowboy right now has got to be kind of scary. With Tony Romo gone and Dez gone, you don't know how that offense is going to perform. Especially the running backs. Is Brandon Weeden? I think they got Matt Castle today. Are those guys going to be able to give you enough of a quality quarterbacking to prevent defenses stacking the box, stopping the run, and not really worrying as much about the quarterback and the receivers? We'll have to wait and see. I think I said this on Sunday. We let D'Angelo Williams, even though he's probably really only going to be relevant for these first 2 weeks, just to let him slide all the way to the 14th round in the draft when you knew he was going to be the man in a high-scoring offense, which Pittsburgh has. And here he had he had 77 yards and 3 touchdowns, about 30 points from him. That really carried you this week. Outside of a couple of your receivers, made the difference in this one. Bennett didn't do too much. Abdullah did absolutely nothing. Crosby kicked a couple field goals for you. You got a couple touchdowns and turnovers. Good game from your defense against Chicago, Arizona Cardinals. Yahoo says 23. It was definitely a little bit more than that. So that's a couple big performances. Unfortunately, for Mighty Midgets, you had to go up against that. You got a big game from Matt Ryan. 30 completions, 360 yards from him. Only 1 touchdown. You probably would have liked to see at least 2 or 3 touchdowns if you're going to have a big game like that. Brandon Marshall looked pretty good. 7 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. Looks like he's going to be pretty consistent as the year goes along, barring any sort of injuries. Fitzpatrick seems to like him. They got a good rapport. Allen Robinson comes back from his week 1 disappointment. Gets you 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Plugged in Beasley. He caught 4 passes, but he only got you 14 yards. Murray, not much from him. Tevin Coleman got you a touchdown and 30 yards. But unfortunately, he got hurt and went out pretty early in the game. Jason Witten played through some injuries to himself. No touchdowns, though, this week. Pretty much the whole Cowboys offense suffered after Tony Romo went down. So Coleman's going to be out for a while here, coming up in this week. Witten, who knows what's going to be going on with him. Usually, I don't think he almost never misses a game. But he's got a couple different injuries, so who knows. And then you got Eddie Lacy, one of the main players on your team here. Unfortunately, he got hurt early in the game, went out. He only got you 9 yards, so less than a point from Eddie Lacy when you were hoping for a big game there. Who knows how long he's gonna be out, if at all. But he's gonna be if he comes back this week, he's gonna be playing on a bum ankle. So who knows how good he'll perform. Couple of field goals and pats from your kicker. Unfortunately, the Detroit Lions defense, not quite what they were the last couple years. Only 1 turnover and 1 sack. They lost the game, gave up a lot of points, a lot of yardage. Didn't get too much from them. So, you got a couple big performances from Hubert Squash's players. and those injuries really bogged down your score here for Mighty Midgets. Just not much you can do about that. But said Mighty Midgets, you still got 170 points. You would have beaten a lot of people. You're probably more worried about the next couple weeks with all these injuries to your players, but still nothing you can do about that. You just gotta pick up the pieces. That's why it's always important to have depth on your bench, because you never know what's going to happen or who you're going to have to plug in here. And Huber Squashers, they moved to 2-0. They're in third place. And now they get Le'Veon Bell back. So he's going to be at full strength for the foreseeable future here. At least, well, not full strength because Des Bryant's going to be out. But I guess at this point you're just hoping for a playoff spot, and then when Des Bryant comes back, you'll be able to pop him in there and try to make a title run here. As for Mighty Midgets, looks like he's going to put up a good, pretty decent score every week, but you got to battle through those injuries and keep on going. But you're 1-1. You're still in 6th place, so things could definitely be a lot worse for you. Next we had the Rook, Gags, the Fry Cook, going up against Chips my boy. And this one, not pretty quiet performances from both teams, but the Rook was able to take this one down. The score was 151.85 to 136.3. After that week 1 performance from Sam Bradford and Jordan Matthews, can't help but feel a little let down this week for Chips my boy. Like I said before, that whole Eagles offense was abysmal, hard to watch in that game. I think Jordan Matthews, he got 6 catches, 80 yards, and a touchdown, which is actually a pretty good performance. 20 points from him, but I think that was pretty much all garbage time, like fourth quarter, end of the game points for him. But hey, points are points. Hey, let's talk about the guy who won this matchup first. How about that? The Rook got, 37 points from Phillip Rivers. Beckham Jr. had 7 catches, almost 150 yards, and a touchdown. But you got a long touchdown from him. Calvin Johnson, 10 catches, a touchdown, only 83 yards though on those 10 catches. You'd like to see a little bit more than that. But Macklin, a couple catches, 50 yards from him. McFadden, couple points from him. McCoy, he's not in the flex, so you didn't get those points. You got 9 from him. Quiet game from Kelsey after his big week 1. Only 10 points from him. Put Dunbar in the flex, hoping for some receiving yardage this week, like he did last week. Couple catches, 45 yards, but he's really not getting the rushing. You only got 8 yards from him, so he ended up getting you just over 8 points. 1 field goal, 1 PAT from your kicker. Tough matchup for your defense, Kansas City. They were up against Denver Broncos. They did get a touchdown and turnover, but gave up a pretty decent amount of yardage. Got you 15 points on Yahoo. It was probably something in that range. So he got 150 points, which was enough to beat Chips my boy, who got about half the points this week that he got last week from Sam Bradford. 30 points there. Like I said, Jordan Matthews, 20 points. Amari Cooper, 24 points from him. He got a long touchdown. He had 7 for 109. I think most of those yards came from his long touchdown. So you got 3-point bonus there. A couple catches, 40 yards from Mike Wallace. Adrian Peterson, closer to what you were expecting last week from him. Over 130 rushing yards. I don't know if he scored or not, but he did lose a fumble. You didn't flex him, which can't make fun of you for that, because you got Sproles. You put him in. Almost all of his value comes from the flex anyway. But Peterson did have a couple catches and 60 yards that didn't count for you. Melvin Gordon, you plugged him in. He got you 88 rushing yards. Jared Cook, typical game from him. 5 catches, 50 yards. Unfortunately, Sproles, he got you a bunch of rushing. He got you a couple catches and some receiving yards there. But unfortunately, he had negative rushing yards and no touchdowns or anything. As I think the only touchdown the Eagles scored was that Jordan Matthews touchdown. And only 6 points for you from Sproles this week. Definitely disappointing there. 1 field goal and 1 PAT from your kicker. And as for Baltimore defense, you probably thought that was going to be a good matchup this week, even though they were in Oakland as the away team. I was kind of surprised that Derek Carr started. I thought he was hurt, that they might be starting McGloin or something, one of their backup quarterbacks. But I guess Carr started, and Amari Cooper went crazy against your defense. They gave up a ton of points, a ton of yards. They got you 1 turnover and 1 sack, but they lost the game and did not get you pretty much anything there. So definitely a disappointing performance from a lot of your players, which when I end up saying that, that usually means that you did not have a good week and you didn't win the game, which is what happened with your only 136, which knocks you down to 0-2. The Rook, though, he is now 2-0, and he is in 5th place, while Chips my boy slides all the way down to 10th place. While we're talking about the Rook, I'm going to say that something happened earlier today, a little trade between him and Possum Magic, which I'm not going to get into that very much. I'll let the preview guys, the podcast, since I assume this week is going to be their first performance, we'll let them get into it. But my only question to Gags is, when are you going to... It's still my hope that maybe one day you're going to make a trade that actually is beneficial to your team and not detrimental, at least in my opinion. But if you think you got what you wanted and Tree got what he wanted, hey, I don't really care. Unless it's clearly lopsided, which Jimmy would have to step in and do something about that, but it clearly isn't. But I think everyone's got an opinion about every single trade, myself included. But hey, more power to you guys. And let's see, the last matchup. Did we talk about? I think we talked about everybody else. Yeah. Was Vanilla, who was riding high off a big week 1 performance, over 200 from him last week. And guess what? Another 200-point bomb from him. This time dropped on the Twerkin Bullcuts, Josh. Vanilla had 201.3, while Twerkin had 150. Excuse me. He had 154.95. I said, not a lot of impressive performances from Vanilla's team, but a couple big ones, and that's all it took, really. Tom Brady went off, as I said before, against Buffalo, got 76 points. I don't think that's a record. I think Peyton Manning holds the single-player record for 1 week. I think it was in the 80s. So, but still, 76 points from him. And then Monday night, the Jets defense, and they look like they're going to be legit this year, even though they were at Indianapolis. What you think should have been a tough matchup, high-scoring offense for them, but nope. They had 5 turnovers, didn't give up too many points, not a whole lot of yardage too, especially rushing. I think it was ended up being 33 points for them, if I remember correctly, since it was just last night. But so you got 76 and 33 from just your quarterback and your defense. That's what, about 110 points there. So that means you got 90 from the rest of your guys, which is just a little averages out to just a little bit over 10 points from each of those. So Cobb, he got you 20. Eric Decker got you 24. He had a bunch of catches, almost 100 yards and a touchdown on Monday night. But he hurt his knee, so who knows what's going to be coming up for him. Exactly how hurt he is yet. Not exactly sure. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But DeAndre Hopkins, a quiet performance from him after 2 touchdowns in week 1. Only 5 catches, 50 yards from him. Carlos Hyde, after his big week 1, he didn't really do too much. Only 40 yards, no touchdowns or anything. Let's see, Chris Johnson, you plugged him in, hoping he'd maybe get you a touchdown or 2 with now that thought he was going to be the main guy for the Cardinals. Looks like David Johnson is going to be more important here fantasy-wise for them while Ellington is out. He got you 72 yards, though. Jordan Cameron, couple catches, 60 yards from him. Quiet game from Forte against a tough Arizona defense. Your expectations had to be lowered a little bit after that big performance from him in week 1 when he was well over 100 yards, a lot of catches, touchdown or 2. He got you 15 points this week. Kicker, 1 field goal, 1 PAT from him. And again, the Jets defense, 33 points from them. So just much like Possum Magic, you got a big score, and you got mostly coming from those 2 crucial positions of quarterback and defense. So it's not going to happen. It doesn't happen every week, but you always hope that those are obviously the 2 positions where the biggest amount of points can come from. So you got to feel happy when it works out that you do get the big points from both of those. It makes it a lot easier to take down your opponent when you got a pretty big advantage to begin with. And finally, the Twerk and Bowl Cuts. Good game, Aaron Rodgers, 50 points from him. Larry Fitzgerald, who most people kind of wrote off going into the season here. He caught 8 passes. You kind of thought John Brown was going to take over here as the PPR force, but not quite so far. Just ask Lebsy Hooligans. Larry Fitzgerald, 8 catches, 112 yards, and 3 touchdowns from him this week. Pierre Garçon, couple catches, a touchdown. You'd like to see more than 23 receiving yards out of 6 catches from him, but he did get you the touchdown. Jonathan Stewart, 60 yards. TJ Yeldon, 70 yards. Eifert, he had a huge week 1. Decent performance from him, though. You got 15 points. He got you another touchdown. Frank Gore, though, you got him in the flex. Pretty much everything about the Colts offense so far this year has been a huge disappointment, especially your 2 guys. I forgot to mention Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson and Frank Gore, they combined to get you about 10 points. So definitely a huge, huge disappointment for you there. Heavily invested in those guys this year. And probably a big reason, big factor into why you start out the season 0-2. Just got to hope for better from those guys down the line. It can't get much worse. So hopefully, for your sake, it'll get better. A couple field goals, couple PATs for your kicker. And St. Louis defense, you plugged them in after their big performance in week 1. Couple turnovers, couple sacks for them, but they gave up a lot of points. They lost the game, gave up a lot of yardage, and Yahoo says 8. It was definitely, it might have been a little bit more than that, but it's definitely close to that. And unfortunately for you, I don't know if, I think last week you might have started Torrey Smith, but then you benched him this week, and of course he had over 120 yards and a touchdown, think one of his touchdowns was a long one. Could have been a much better play for you. Also, you picked up Travis Benjamin, who actually scored 3 touchdowns, had 150 yards receiving. Now, who knows what to do with him. I don't know if you saw those. His touchdowns are just basically Manziel throwing long bombs to him and hoping for the best. He also did get a return touchdown, which you had the Cleveland defense, who you did play in week 1, but then you benched them here in week 2, and they would have been a huge difference maker for you in this week if you had stuck with them. But it's difficult to, when you got two good defenses and you're trying to play the matchups. You went with St. Louis. They looked good last week, but they were on the road. It's tough. It really depends on just how good you think the defense is going to be. You got 2 good ones. Maybe not so much how they're going to be, but who they're playing against really makes a difference here. But Cleveland defense, they were at home. St. Louis was away. That definitely has to play an important role when you're trying to pick which matchup to go with. Said here you went with the away team, and they didn't do too much. If you had stuck with the home team, which was Cleveland, they would have gotten you a ton of points this week. I don't know if it would have been enough to make a difference, seeing as how you lost by almost 50. But if you had stuck with some of those guys, it definitely would have gotten you a lot closer to a win here, gotten you a lot more points than you did get. But it's easy to look back and say, yeah, you should have done this, you should not have done that. But as here giving you the recap, don't get down on yourself. It is really just a crapshoot when you think about it. So you got 2 good defenses. You're always gonna be trying to pick one or the other. So you're not always gonna make the right choice, especially here with your receivers. You got a couple good ones, but you drafted Andre Johnson, hoping for big things from him this year. I wouldn't be surprised if you consider sitting him until you actually see a good performance from him. He just doesn't look like he's running down the field. He's catching really short passes. The young guys look a lot faster than him. Just look at Moncrief. Even what's the rookie's name from? I don't know. Dorsett. Why can't I think of his name? Even he looked good. Even though he was up against a tough defense, you can tell the difference. You just watch the games. You can see the speed difference between the older guys and the young guys. And Andre Johnson just doesn't look like he's going to be able to keep up this year. Frank Gore, he actually looked all right. They've been in tough spots. He hasn't been able to get in the end zone. He should have last night, but he couldn't hold on to the ball there on his goal line carry. But you got Colts. You were banking on them being a big, high-flying offense this year. They did play 2 tough defenses here the first 2 weeks of the season, so you kind of expectations couldn't have been too high. But I'm sure that from here on out, the schedule's got to get much easier for them. But you got to be pretty leery of Andre Johnson here. Like I said, you're getting performances from other guys who are on your bench. So until Andre Johnson proves something to you, you might want to consider putting him on the bench and plugging in one of those other guys. So I think that's pretty much it for week 2. Like I said, FC Bohoric is eliminated from the knockout pool this week. I was hoping to keep the video under 45 minutes this week, so I'm just about there. So here, you know what? I'm just going to end this one and say good luck to everyone next week, and hopefully you escape the injury bug, and we'll see you then. Okay?